Hi, I'm Vanessa Rose, President and CEO of ACF, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to our new board co-chairs as of July 1, Nirmala Rajasekar and Stephen Miles. You can read more about each of them on our website, but I'd like to take a moment to share why I'm excited to work with each of them. Nirmala is a renowned Veena player, vocalist, and Carnatic composer who's usually very busy touring the world. A native to Chennai, India, she has for more than 20 years called herself a Minnesotan. She's been involved with ACF for years with 3 albums on Innova and on the board since 2018. Nirmala brings an incredible generosity and enthusiasm for ACF. She reminds us that classical isn't just Western European music, and composing does not always include paper. She invites her incredible network of artists around the world to engage in our work and inspires me to lead as a woman the best way I know how. Stephen is a composer, educator, founder of New Music New College in Sarasota, Florida, and was for many years New College's provost. He retired this summer after 32 years on the New College faculty. Congratulations. And as a composer, Stephen has focused on music for the voice, producing songs, theater compositions, and choral works. He's also published essays on the social dimensions of music and performance, which are profoundly interesting to consider in today's setting. He's been on the ACF board since 2016 and was part of the search committee to give me this opportunity. His emphasis on the connection between sound and social meaning pushes ACF to consider how we best support and amplify the impact of music being created today. His organizational leadership motivates how we craft our case to supporters and our greater community. Stephen and Nirmala, thank you for joining me today. This is your first official week in your new roles as co-chairs. This is a shared leadership model that's a new experience for me as well. I'd love to know, how do each of you see this collaborative approach benefiting ACF?
Well, go ahead, Nirmala.
Are you sure? Okay.
Sure.
I look forward to this new collaboration, as I do to every collaboration that I'm involved in, because I believe collaborative power gives us that synergy of 2 + 2, which is equal to 8. So we believe, Stephen and I believe, that we will be able to be very effective helping support you, Vanessa, and ACF in all that you do because of this collaborative approach. If I were to see our backgrounds, one thing that stands strong is the fact that we're both educators. And we come with that background of education and believing that education, conveying it, putting things in perspective, with multiple perspectives. Stephen comes from a different background of education and I do from a different kind of music. And then are drawing in our collective experiences to give us that collaborative capital that we will bring to the table. And we're excited. I am extremely thrilled and honored, personally, to serve as a co-chair with Stephen Miles. I look to his statesmanship, his wisdom, and learning a lot, which I've already begun doing in these few months of prepping up to this July 1st taking over as co-chairs from very large shoes of Anne LeBaron. I have already been experiencing Stephen's wisdom and statesmanship. And together, Vanessa, with you, it's been such a pleasure to get to know you over the last couple of years, and now to be in this position. One of my favorite organizations ever is ACF. So I'm thrilled and honored to serve in this position, and I humbly thank you for putting me in this position. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
my
you,
honor.
Nirmala. That was very nice for you to say that. Yeah, adding to what you just said, I think that our strategic plan, looking ahead over the next 5 years, it's very ambitious. And I think it's a good moment to have 2 chairs. There's so much work to do, not only with the board, with all of our composers and music creators, but with Vanessa and the very talented staff. That having 2 chairs gives us double the coverage and double the support. That's really great. And just to echo what you were saying, we do have complementary life experiences, but I've learned we have shared values. And so I trust you completely, Nirmala. So it's really looking forward to working with you and working with Vanessa. The future for ACF, this is very important. It's a great moment in the country to be working in this field. and I'm excited.
Thank you. Me too. So from before I started in this role, even ACF and the board was looking to center racial equity in our work. The past year and a half since I started has offered an extraordinary opportunity for growth and action for us. How do you see both this past work that you were both a part of and the continued work informing ACF's role in the ecosystem?
Well, one thing I would say is that, you're right to point out that it's been a year and a half. This takes a while to develop. And one of the things is that we learned that if you want to be serious about promoting racial equity or to be anti-racist, that has to be the center of what you do. You can't say, well, we're about this and we're about that. And oh yes, we also want diversity, equity, and inclusion. That does not work. So what we had to learn is that how to rethink our mission by centering it on the work of racial equity. I want to mention though that we have always been about trying to question what we do. I was just reviewing some of the history with ACF, of listening to other voices. There was the project, the Native American Composer Project, 2004 to 2010, First Nation Composer Project. We have been in a process of self-inspection, but I think right now, this process for racial equity has required a recentering of our work.
And I would like to add to what Stephen said, because as we were looking through some of our, strategic plans, I looked through the one from not now, but the one that was from the one before. And right there, ACF has already talked about making racial equity the centerpiece of our 2018 to 2020 strategic plan. Talks very clearly about the next 3 years of 18, 19, 20 and what we plan to do. So this was not an action that happened in the last 6 months or even in the last 9 months. This happened 2 years ago. And it's very thrilling that the board that I joined in 2018, at that point had a mandate, as Stephen said, to look at what we are doing and what could we do differently. So when I was going through that 2018 to 2020, I said, yes, of course, right there is the seed for the work that we are now building on, which is our current anti-racist centric work. And when we talk about, what is anti-racism? We are talking about creating those policies, creating those procedures that help create structures that will give equity to everybody that we are serving. And that is making that step happen right from the beginning. For example, when we say, ask for grant application in any of our programming, new programs or existing programs, we clearly make sure that there are no gatekeeper processes that will stop anybody from getting in with the way they would like to present their music. Right. So we will not make it a requirement to bring a score in there. Right. On the other hand, welcome whatever method you can present your work to us. Similarly, the panels that evaluate these proposals and choose all the projects that we would like to fund. We would like to fund everyone that comes through it. But whatever the panels are going to do should be adequately represented by members of community that can actually speak to those who are going to then want to send their proposals for consideration. So actual ground level work by creating those guidelines, rules, regulations that will facilitate this policy of bringing in representation that represents an artist best. And I think that advocacy piece, which is going to be a huge part of our strategic plan, is going to take care of this. So very excited that we have started this work, if I may say, 2 to 3 years ago, to move in this direction. And I'm very grateful for this very knowledgeable and deep board that has made this possible, Vanessa.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I'm very fortunate in having the opportunity to have a lot of meaningful conversations with Libby Larson, one of our founders, who's incredibly supportive and remains involved. And she talks about how it was always meant to be an evolving organization.
Yes.
It was always meant to be more than just the supporting the performance of new music. It was meant to be a whole community of creators and people who were part of that. And what that means has evolved over the 40 plus years that ACF has existed. So, and I think it's been able to do that because of that inquiry that you talked about, Stephen, the questions that we ask, so that we ensure that we are still relevant and having the impact that we can have. And some of the questions we've been asking of late is specifically connected to our name even, right? What is it to be American? What is it to be a composer? Who composes?
Mm-hmm.
And what does anti-racism mean? I'm curious, as you think about those questions and in your role, what do you find most compelling about this kind of radical inquiry? I like to use that term.
Before we tackle
Yeah.
that question, I just want to go back to Libby Larson and Stephen Paulus,
Sure.
who founded ACF back in 1973. I think it was actually
right.
established as the Minnesota Composers Forum in 1975, but it began in 1973.
Right.
And they really began with a desire to connect with a larger public.
Mm-hmm.
They want contemporary music and composers to be confined and protected within the academy, which of course now as then was overwhelmingly white. Right. They wanted concerts that were out in the public. And I think that initiative has led us to all about, well, then who is the public? And how do we serve the public? And I think the moment that we're in our country is one where we are realizing how many voices have been left out of our sense of public. And so we are helping to amplify voices that perhaps have been marginalized, but we have an institutional responsibility to do that. So I'm glad that we're embracing it. But I just want to underscore that was actually a pretty bold move in 73 to say, we want to venture outside of the academy and actually connect with the public. That was a very bold move. So I think a lot of what we're doing actually is a continuation of some of those, the impetus that was there at the very beginning.
Absolutely. I think that's also enabled us to pivot as we've had to in these last few months. Couldn't have prepared for this. There's no precedence, right? And so what does it mean to be an organization that's supporting, advocating for creators of music in a pandemic? And in Minnesota, as we've just experienced this incredible movement out of a tragedy, the killing of George Floyd, our ability to be not only responsive, but hopefully proactive in a time when there's a lot happening. There's a lot of pain, there's a lot of anger and uncertainty, of course. How do we lead and offer optimism, support, connection, a space for all of that? I think that's those are the questions I've certainly been asking, not only for today, but in this 5-year plan that we've just discussed and the board has approved, which I'm sure will continue to evolve because it should and needs to.
And thinking about that radical inquiry. So dismantling the structures is one thing, getting those processes, structures that are already there, but not working the way they were meant to be. But then creating new structures, that is where we are looking at some serious thought. So we have to keep inquiring about this. And while we are in that topic of responding to what just happened in our great city, I want to compliment you all at ACF and the staff for making that decision to take a week off immediately. I don't mean off from work, but you all are working as well from home and doing what needed to be done. But then everybody was out there trying to help the community in any way and every way they can, in every way that was possible, whether it was taking supplies, helping with cleanup, creating music albums to support a cause which actually did really well. And all of these actions led by ACF, very silently being that leader of change, being that leader of action and renewing commitment, was very powerful, Vanessa. It was, there was just one little email from you all that said, hello, everybody. We are working, but we will also be out there with our community. And to me, when many of you were living in that community, many of you living there and experiencing what was going on. I know, Stephen, you're a little bit away from our.
It's a little further south.
A little further south, yeah.
I was about 15 miles away from where everything happened, but I was extremely connected to what was going on. But it was also very empowering to see the organization that I care deeply about, ACF, actually leading by action. And so that was something else that, again, makes me feel that our heart is in the right place and we are doing things the way we know to do them, the best way. And we're always learning. It's not like we know it all. We don't have the action solutions to everything. And that's the other thing I wanted to say was, the important thing is that renewal of commitment, the ongoing, continuing inquiry. We don't stop with, okay, I got this, isn't it?
Yeah, I want to build on something that you're saying here, Nirmala. Yeah, I too was very pleased and impressed that ACF really devoted a week just to community work at the time of that tragedy. If your organization, if your cultural organization is focused entirely on the artwork, the social often seems like an intrusion, a disruption of your work. And then you're having to think, oh, well, how do we respond? I was so pleased that we had adopted our strategic plan, which says, no, the social is at the heart of what we do. Music is sound, unquestionably, but it's not some kind of sonic abstraction. People make sound.
Right.
People share. It is profoundly social. So when you acknowledge and commit to that social character and the need for social equity, for racial equity, you're always working to further that through the music.
Right.
The work of music creators of many, many different sorts and kinds, and the variety is endless. And Nirmala, you spoke so eloquently about that, that people make music and people develop the tools and the skills that are necessary for the music that they want to make. Some people use notation and scores, others maybe don't. That is not the point. That is an irrelevant aspect. But this idea that music is profoundly social and that our work is social is something I'm very proud of, and I'm very pleased.
Thank you. And this is why I'm so excited to work with the two of you. Yeah, exactly. So, and as we're talking about already, this mission-driven work, which I think this is the time for all organizations, the people in them, to question their mission and the relevance of what they're able to do in this moment and what they are going to be doing that connects with that mission, or if the mission needs to be changed even. And so I think this work that we've been doing over this past year to set up the strategic plan and revisit our mission statement, and being tested in this moment, if that continues to feel relevant, has been such an interesting and very helpful exercise, actually. And I think what we've all discovered is that, in fact, yes, this holds up, and this, in fact, will strengthen our ability to lead through this moment and moving forward for 5 years, which doesn't sound like a long time, but a lot can happen in 5 years. Which, by the way, also leads us into our 50th anniversary of the organization of Minnesota Composers Forum, not the 1973 coming together. We have to be clear. So I'm curious. We've already talked about this a bit, but just any other thoughts you have on what are your most interesting? What are the things you're looking forward to? What are you most enthusiastic about in implementing this work?
Well, I want to just back up to what you were saying, because I think what's implicit with that is that we want to be proactive, not reactive.
Right.
And to look at our programming and our work, I want to offer one example of something that has taken years to develop. So we have a program called ACF Connect, right? Where we connect composers with an ensemble. And this has been a wonderful program. And this year it's composers paired with or working with Roomful of Teeth, you know, a great vocal ensemble. But the next ensemble is going to be Great Black Music Ensemble, which is part of the AACM, the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians, based in Chicago. Mm-hmm. The planning for that has been started a year and a half ago.
Right.
That didn't start yesterday. So if you're going to have an impact, it has to be sustained, and it has to be something that's deliberate and intentional. Mm-hmm. So I look at that as being a sign of the kinds of things that are going to be happening. Many, many other things will be happening, but that's just, to me, that's a sign of something that started because we started this path a year and a half ago, and we can point to that.
And just one other thing about that, which I think is a critical element of what does it mean as a white person leading a organization that's trying to be a racially equitable space. And this panel we were just talking about at New Music Gathering, we were just talking about tokenism. And Anthony Green spoke to this specifically, the value of the relationship building. And so we've built a relationship with AACM, and it's very important that it's clear that this program, we did not select the artists they're working with. Right. We created the infrastructure and support for them to do a call and identify new artists. And in some cases, artists they knew, but it enabled them to have a much broader reach than they would on their own. And of course, we're financially supporting them as well, but they selected the artists. They're working with them over the course of this year. We'll see when the premieres happen. But it's about the relationship building that they're able to do in their own way, that we are just the connector. You know, we are just there to do what they want to do and to see through their vision. And I think about that in all of this amplification that we were just talking about, and all the amazing artists and organizations and newly formed ensembles that exist around the country, that we want to amplify, not tokenize, and not say, look, we're being, quote, diverse, but because we do have a platform, and we hope it's helpful to them.
And that's exactly what I was thinking about. ACF the Connector is one of the things that we say as a key role in our mission. And I see myself doing that all the time. In fact, my role here is the connector. Yeah. And one of the things we've already started talking about is bringing in communities that are not as familiar with certain other genres of music or styles. And ACF is already facilitating some of these conversations for somebody who might want to understand a little more about the Western classical tradition, if I might, because I come from the Indian classical tradition, which, by the way, we notate, but very differently. Only an Indian classical musician will be able to read that notation. And many a time it's in the head, it's not even written. But anyway, coming back to the connection and education, that's something I wanted to also talk about. The art form that I talk about, have been studying, will continue to study. It takes many lifetimes to learn a 2,000-year-old art form. Is one which is, you can say, tradition bound, but what is tradition then? It's a continuum. It's a dynamic continuum. So when I talk to my students today about the traditions of Indian classical music and the music itself, the one thing I find very powerful is because we're talking to the next generation, we're talking to the tomorrows, and to help them understand music is one human lived experience. You can live it in the 21st century, you could live it 1,000 years ago, 2,100 years ago. But we talk about those emotions, those expressions, and when they come from each and every culture, each culture has its own way of talking about this tradition. And that is the key binder and connector. And I think that would be the way we talk to each other. The way, of course, the language of love is most important, but then with it comes respect, with it comes courage, with it comes bravery, standing for your action, speaking the right thing or what you believe is right, constant inquiry. All of these things lead to that go-to space that ACF is wanting to become, and has already, in my opinion, arrived in a big way at the national level, even not only in Minnesota, because we know that with some of our programs, they're getting increasingly popular all over the place. And I know for a fact that there are people watching ACF gatherings and things that we put together, because that's another thing we would like to do, is being a host, being an enabler, being an influencer, and people from many parts of the world, thanks to the internet, are able to see and be influenced by what we are trying to build here at ACF. So given the fact that we are living in a pandemic, which is an extremely challenging time for all of us, and we have come out of a situation that just surfaced and taught us to look at ourselves a little more, I still believe there are silver linings in this, that we can become stronger and move towards our strategic plan, which again was formulated a few years ago, and continuing to relook at that plan. You know, we are always looking at it with new eyes, and we are looking at it with new, information that's coming into us. And I appreciate every single member of the staff that's working so hard, particularly when they can't go to work and have their usual setup, and they all have to do all of this from home. And this very powerful board that we're privileged to sit on. I'm extremely honored to sit on this board, because every board member there, we had our board meeting, and we all can very proudly say that for a Zoom meeting to go for 5 hours plus and have people focused,
Right.
I mean, there were, no other incentive except to see us implement and get better at what we are doing. It was so powerful, all those breakout rooms that we were able to achieve. And kudos to all of you, Vanessa, you and the staff, for pulling this together. But hats off to the board for this very inspired leadership that they are giving to ACF. And I think overall, we do have a fairly decent recipe for making something good come out of the oven here.
And that board meeting was May 30, which half of the people on that Zoom meeting had helicopters and sirens outside their homes, because there was still so much activity happening in the Twin Cities. So with that in addition, as a distraction among many things, to have that focus just speaks to the level of engagement. I'm very fortunate. Yeah. So we could talk all day, I know, and we'll have so many more conversations, which I look forward to. I'm glad we could share a little bit about where we're going together, and of course, each of you to our community. And Nirmala, you also remind us that as a music organization, we should always include music, which you also did for our September convening. If folks watch that, you opened our convening with such a lovely presentation. So you wanted to share something here today.
Yes, just before we started talking, I was reminded of this beautiful composition in the language Gujarati, which is not my native language. It's one of India's 20 plus languages. I think there are now at 29 official languages in India. And this is Gujarati, the mother tongue of Mahatma Gandhi. And the poet Narsingh Mehta composed this, I think, 11th century or something. And it talks about the whole community and members of community who are selfless and value every single member of community as a personal responsibility. That's what this song is about. It's an ode to all those selfless people. Today we remember so many people, healthcare people, people who are frontline workers, but we're also talking about every member of society. And I do want to thank our patrons, our funders, our environmental supporters who, for ACF, in these tough times, they are standing by us, giving us inspirational motivation. I know, Vanessa, you're talking to them regularly about the work we are doing, and I thank each and every one of them who have stood by us in these tough times, and we thank you for your continued patronage. So this song, Vaishnav Janato, is an ode for that single member of society, every single member of society who values society so much more. And thank you for giving me space to just share this with you all today.
Anytime. Thank you.
Just get a quick cut the whistle here. I वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे पीड़ पराए जाने रे। वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे पीड़ पराए जाने रे। पर दुख पर दुख उपकार करे तोए मन अभिमान लाने रे। पर दुख उपकार करे तोए मन अभिमान लाने रे। वैष्णव जन वैष्णव जन।
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nirmala.
Share
Thank you.
that.
What a
Thank you.
wonderful gift.
It's Mahatma Gandhi's favorite because it talked about that member of society who cares so much that for a minute they would not think about, am I able to do this task of helping this person? No. All they would do was, oh my God, that person is in pain. I need to go. I need to go do what I can. That is such a selfless spirit. And thank you for letting me share that from the 11th century. Thank you.
I can't think of a better conclusion for our conversation. Thank
Agreed.
you so much to both of you, and let's get to work.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you both.
Have a brilliant day, everybody. Take care.
Bye.